الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته شيخنا.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome back to Roots Conversations podcast session. I've lost count how many podcasts we've done. I believe this is 21, but if it's not, then we can edit that one out, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, Roots Conversations has been continuing its podcasting for quite some time now. We try to provide a tarbiyah mindset when it comes to subjects of spirituality, personal finance, things that affect us socially, physically, emotionally, mentally, but also from a faith perspective. And it tries to ground us towards Islam and the Islamic principles that we try to follow, bi'idhni Rabbi. With me today, inshallah, is Shaykhuna Muawiyah, Ustad, brother, mashallah, someone I found very difficult to summarize as a biography, which is not usually the case. May Allah preserve him. But he's been very busy since he graduated from University of Medina. What year was it you graduated, Ustad?
2008.
Subhanallah, you look a lot younger than I imagined. Mashallah.
Bruv, that's how it is, bruv. That's how it is. Black on crack.
So,
no, what
mashallah,
it was, if you look at my pictures when I was 20, I looked even younger than that. So, if anything, alhamdulillah, I've come into a good form, inshallah. Because when I was at 20, I probably looked about 12.
Alhamdulillah, that's good. It's good. Ustad Muawiyah, did you graduate in Hadith or was it Sharia?
I went to Sharia. I went to Sharia because, I mean, to be honest, it's an interesting one. I guess it's similar to all people who go to university. You don't really know how the subject really is because you've never really studied it. So I had a taster of what usul al-fiqh was, and I thought, okay, I preferred that than hadith because hadith was a lot of name of men and narrators, and I'm really bad with names. So I figured if I went to Sharia, at least I'd avoid the names, not realizing that there were enough names there as it was in hadith as well, but just a different type of thing. But yeah, I went to Sharia.
Alhamdulillah. And in terms of like your time in Medina, you graduated, and I believe you had transitioned into Islamic teaching. Is that correct? In Arabic and whatnot?
Yeah. So before we graduated, me and a few other students, we had a discussion. What would we do once we graduated? Because that's always the question, and challenge really for anyone who wants to study Islam. Realistically, a person who studies Islam to a higher level, the options aren't extensive. I guess that's everything really. If you're a doctor, you can't really do things to do with medicine. You can't really become a CEO of a tech company. But I mean, so your options are kind of limited, and even more limited in Western countries, whereby people don't necessarily want that kind of qualifications. Some don't even respect that kind of qualifications. So what we could do was a bit limited. For me, I didn't want to spend 7 years studying Islam and then come back and do nothing related to what I just spent 7 years to do. So I figured, look, I'm going to teach Arabic and Islamic studies, and I'm going to try my best to sustain myself financially by doing what I came here to do. I didn't want to work for someone else because I didn't want to have any restrictions what I can or can't teach, that kind of thing. So that's So since even before I graduated, I started teaching Arabic and Islamic studies and so on and so forth. So yeah.
Mashallah, mashallah. And then in terms of, I mean, this is a very cliche statement, but I can imagine because of, you mentioned already, University of Medina graduate, transitioning into the West in terms of career and some institutions not recognizing, or some companies not recognizing your accolades or your traits. But in terms of reinventing yourself, if that concept does exist, did you feel like you had to dabble into things that you didn't presume you'd had to do before coming to UK?
See, the thing is, before I became Muslim, I was into IT, technology, and science anyway. And when I became Muslim, that kind of took a back foot, you could say. And I focused all my attention on Islam because it was a new thing. I wanted to engage 100% in this. And to be honest, at that time in my life, things like physics and computing became a bit boring to me because I was more interested in Quran and Sunnah and the rest of it. But there comes a point that when you've quenched your thirst to a certain degree, and you've moved on a bit, you old habits return. So even from when I was in Medina, some of my old traits began to creep back. Even when I was in Medina, I built my own computer again, installed from scratch, build it from parts, which is what I did before I became Muslim. I began to learn about more, go back into studying physics again. So and I also dabbled in programming and whatnot. So I'd already kind of started to reverse back to old habits anyway. So when I came and graduated from Medina University now, and I tried to establish the institute to teach Arabic and so on and so forth, in doing that, I did need to have a website. I did need to do certain other things, which I was doing anyway. So it was more like, okay, I need to do this, just do that. There were some things I picked up along the way, which I don't, which are quite new. But again, it wasn't really far from what I was already in. I mean, even before Islam, I was very big into maths as well. So when I had to do accountancy, it wasn't that difficult. It was just numbers, the same thing. So, you know, I can't really say there was much that it was absolutely new. Maybe economics, because I can't think of anything before Islam that was in that direction. But maybe you could say it's mathematics in a way. I don't know.
So alhamdulillah, it looks like you had something beforehand, and then when you came back to UK after graduating, there was some sort of interest that reignited.
Yeah, because when I was in
Tabarakallah.
college, part of my computing A level, which I didn't finish, was we had to do Delphi programming. So I already had experience in programming using Delphi and Fortran at the time. That's one of the reasons why I left that A level, because it was teaching me stuff I already knew. And like to the teacher, I mean, you're telling me about, you know, zip drives. I mean, who uses a zip drive anymore? I don't know if you even know what a zip drive is. It was like these kind of things. But it was saying, yeah, you have to learn these things. So I was a bit obnoxious at the time, saying, you know, I want to do more stuff. And at the time I was doing 4 A levels. I think, you know, I'm wasting my time with this 4th one.
Yeah.
Just drop it and stick to the other 3. So like I said, I already had experience in that regard. So when it came to learning PHP and MySQL and that kind of stuff, I already had experience doing databasing and web design and programming as well. I had to learn ActionScript when I was in Medina, which is basically just another language. So once you learn one language, going to another language isn't that difficult. I mean, even right now, I'm kind of learning TypeScript, which is an extension of JavaScript, which is an extension of, you know what I'm saying? It's all connected at some point.
Slightly off topic though, I have a question because I'm learning Arabic the past 3-4 years. Would you say learning code is similar to, or being like a software developer is similar to learning a language? Like for example, you're learning a language in software, you're learning a language in actual, physical speech, like Arabic.
Yeah, so definitely, especially as it relates to Arabic. I even said to one of my teachers in Saudi, I said, well, how comes I find Arabic so easy? And he said to me, do you like maths? I said, yeah, actually, that's one of my specialities. I said, that's why. So there are, if you look at the underpinning on the underlying premise of Arabic, mathematics, coding, physics, all of that, or all of them heavily use logic. So if you're logically inclined, if you're that way inclined mentally, some people are creative thinkers, some people are logical thinkers. Everyone's have different way their minds are wired. I'm very logical in that regards. So those kind of topics, you tend to gravitate in that direction. So learning the Arabic language, yes, in terms of the grammar, is very logical. But as I found out the hard way, learning a language isn't just about the grammar. When I was in Saudi, I put a lot of effort to mastering the grammar. And alhamdulillah, I think I achieved a lot of what I wanted to achieve in terms of learning the grammar. But then I discovered after mastering what I called up the grammar, that I was still struggling in the language. And that's when I realized that there's the other component of all languages, which is just the vocabulary. The simple vocabulary. You can't get over the fact you just have to remember the vocabulary. You better know exactly how to structure your sentence and piece it together in a coherent manner. But if you haven't got the actual kalimat, the actual words in your head, then it doesn't really matter much. So you have to combine between the two. The grammar is great, but I would say in any language, 20% of your time is in grammar, 80% of the time is absorbing the vocabulary, because you can speak very well. You can end up speaking very well with little grammar, but you can't speak at all even if you master the grammar. That's just the reality.
SubhanAllah. Okay, is that like the Pareto principle, 20/80?
No, it's me. Like I said, in my first 2 years, I put like 90-10 kind of thing. I put all my effort into the grammar, and I literally clocked it. But then I was still struggling, and I was like, but why? And I realized because I want to express myself, but I just don't have the words available to do that. So that's why you find certain methods to teach languages are more effective at other certain things. So I know a lot of graduates, when they come to the UK, they teach Arabic
Nahu,
using
sarf.
Nahu, Sarf, Medina book, that kind of stuff, and you would achieve the goals of that curriculum, which is to get you ready for university. But you won't achieve the goals of speaking and understanding, which is the goal that which the goal you would achieve just by living in Saudi Arabia. So there are things you would achieve being in Saudi that's not within the curriculum. The curriculum is one goal, but the other goals, which is listening and speaking, that comes through just being there, interaction with teachers and other stuff, which is not within the text directly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does make sense. Someone I've studied for quite some time, and I feel like that does make more sense, especially when you're around people that speak Arabic. I found that I definitely find it a lot easier to grapple with the language because I'm dealing with vocabulary consistently. Whereas if I'm just sitting behind books, it can be a bit cumbersome. But then I do enjoy the Nahwu and Sarf aspect definitely as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the grammar, the understanding. The thing is, what you have to understand, what does it help you do? What goals does it achieve for you personally? If you mastered the grammar and master all the intricacies of the Arabic language and all the nawad and that kind of stuff, when it comes to open up the text, the Quran and Sunnah, you can break down things on a deeper level because you see things that others don't even recognize.
Yeah, 100%.
But if you just want to have a conversation with a dentist about why I got a pain in my molar teeth and every time I do this, it's a challenge because he's not asking about the i'rab of whatnot. He's not asking for the rafa' the nasb. He's just saying, how does it feel? And I'm not with tooth pain. I'm saying, so that happened with me after my first year. I came back to the UK. I said I want to memorize a book on Ajurumi, which is a grammar. And I was going to go through the explanation of that by Ibn Taymiyyah. And I spent the whole summer holiday in the UK mastering that, and I clocked it. So when I went back the second year, grammar-wise, I was finished, but I was still struggling. So at the end of the second year, I stayed in Saudi Arabia, and I joined the Quran Hifz program in Masjid Nabawi. And that was for the whole 3 months when I was there. And I was surrounded by only Arabs at the time. And I learned actually more Arabic spoken-wise and listening in that 3-month period than I did the whole previous 2 years. Obviously, the previous 2 years gave me a good intro to the Arabic language. But I'm saying it's because I was forced to day in and day out speak and engage and talk, and I was pushed to do that in that environment. I was able to accelerate forward. Whereas prior to in those 2 years, when you're in the classroom, you're listening and you're writing. You're not really engaging. You just listen. If you do speak, it'll be during a break time to your English friends, or at the end of lesson, you go home with your English friends. You go home to your wife who speaks English, so you don't really get that experience, that interaction. So yeah, if you want to learn any language, I would definitely suggest small amounts of repetition. That's why there's a good app which you should look into called Duolingo.
Duolingo? Is it Duolingo?
Yeah. Duolingo, Duolingo. I'm using it now to learn Turkish, and it is really effective. Really effective.
You sold me. I'm going to download it.
And the reason why it's effective, again, it's not because it teaches the grammar. I've actually looked at the Arabic, and there's a lot of grammatical mistakes, but it drills the words, it drills the phrases, it drills it over and over again. Just 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes every day. By the end of the 2 months, you probably can have a conversation because you just drill it.
Subhanallah.
Drill.
Same
thing with coding. Same thing with coding. You can learn how to do a loop. You can learn how to do if statements and whatnot. But until you actually make and develop a project and go through the hassle of doing it over and over and over and over and over again, it will never be. You know what I mean?
Also good at research as well, perhaps as well, because I can imagine. For example, like with Arabic, I go into the Hans Weher dictionary, or I look at a few Arabic resources to help me out. I'm stuck. I'm presuming it's equivalent to GitHub, perhaps. I don't know, something like that.
I don't know. The thing is, like I said, there's two types. There's the I would call it the engineering approach, and I'll call it the philosophical approach. As in, you can learn the details and the equations of physics, but an engineer does it. So you can learn Arabic from that perspective, or you can learn Arabic from the doing perspective. So, ironically, I used to be very heavy on a philosophical, not the ideological side, teaching people how the language is and blah blah. But now, after about a decade of teaching Arabic, I'm like, you know what? Just learn the language and speak, and then once you get there, then other stuff will come later on. It's just like baby steps. But one final point, you mentioned handswear. Don't use handswear.
Interesting.
Don't use handswear.
Is it because it's non-Muslim who made it, authored it? Or?
No, nothing like that. No, nothing like that. It's simple because when it teaches you the language, it teaches you Arabic in English. What you want is a dictionary that teaches you Arabic with Arabic. So Al-Mawrid is a better dictionary because although it gives you the English translation, it also gives you. No. There's the same book, but that's
in English. Okay.
Is it a pocket-sized one? The pocket-sized one
it's in English though. Oh, it's the no, it's Arabic to Arabic as well. I think.
No. Terrible, I mean, the book. It is the right book, but it's the wrong book. There's two molded. There's a molded, which is a pocket-sized one, which is useless because most of the words you look for, you can't find it. But the bigger one, it's a big one. It's the same thing. It has Arabic and English. It has both. It has Arabic and it has English. But in the middle, it has also other Arabic words. So you'll have dhahaba and you have to go. But in the middle, it have intalaqa. Or have other words that are also synonyms to the Arabic word. This is what you want to do. You want to try and lean on the Arabic, but if you fail, lean on the English. You want to try and have the word handswear goes straight from Arabic to English, Arabic to English, Arabic to English, and you want to learn Arabic through Arabic words, not learn Arabic through English words.
That makes sense, to be honest with you. We learn a lot by association. MashaAllah, I actually didn't intend to talk about Arabic, but wallahi, I think, I'll be honest with you, it seems like we should definitely get you in the podcast just to talk about Arabic. Because for me, a lot of the stuff that you say, it's hard for me to accentuate, but it really does make sense of what you're saying. Because
one last thing about handswear is handswear, and that perspective of the Arabic and English, that's the problem. But the other problem I see with it is that it's funny because it tries to do too many things. So Arabic books, Arabic dictionaries, you would find the word through the root. So, for example, mustashfa would be in the chapter of shifa, shafa, because that's the root of mustashfa. In Mawrid, the root you find mustashfa in meme because it begins with mustashfa. Meme.
Okay, is that how you want it?
Yeah, for a beginner, yeah. Because remember, it's not about going deep. If you got to the level, the thing is, handswear is the thing that if you've got to that level where you can use morphology, then why are you using the English dictionary? You should be using Arabic only. It's almost a redundant step. If you're at the level of using all the different forms, then you
add more friction. It adds more friction, basically. Whereas, for example, if you learned Saf or the Lat Mazid Fi, wherever it was separate, and then you just said mustashfa, all you want to know, your objective is to know what it means. You know it's mustashfa. It sounds like it's mufa'il or it's maf'ul, but you want to know the meaning so you can search it on meme-wise. Just go into the
I think it's just down to the level, really. If you're a beginner, all you want to know is the meaning of the word, and if possible, other words similar to that in Arabic. If you progressed in your language to another point where you know Saf, you know your fa'il, maf'ul, and what kind of stuff, then you don't even want to use that handswear. You want to go straight to the Arabic only dictionary, which would be probably
that's true.
Al-Wasit, for example, that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's just my
MashaAllah, man, MashaAllah. You know what it is? This actually transitions quite nicely because the more I think about the actual topic of personal finance, and you were going to get into investments and whatnot, I actually realized that for me, I had to go through a journey where I had to appreciate the Sharia and appreciate fiqh and appreciate how Islam it provides us a framework. So, for example, like after fiqh al-ibadah, mu'amalat, mu'asharat, you go into buying and selling, you go into contracts, you go into, and at first I was like, what, I want to learn about spirituality, I want to learn tadabbur al-Quran, and that's important as well. But there's something amazing about understanding the framework of how to apply Islam in your mu'amalat. It's something amazing, it's so beautiful that it even converts people to Islam by how much justice there is in it, and how beautiful it is when you go beyond the mubah and the haram, and you go into mustahab and these kinds of things and try to be good in your conduct and whatnot. But from your perspective, someone who actually studied this in Medina and then lived it to a certain extent, because look, it's not very common. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not very common you meet graduates of seminaries, traditional seminaries, but I've also dabbled into business, tijara, and actually done it themselves, web development, all these kinds of things that they would usually leave to other people and become imams. Allah bless them as well. But in your perspective, you've probably seen the usage of mu'amalat and these kinds of things more than other people. So from your perspective, studying Sharia and looking into how important is it for Muslims, how should we think about finance? How should we think about mu'amalat in general from your perspective?
So one thing I would say is that sometimes people think of the Sharia almost as if it's this topic. It's burdensome topic, I would say, as in, it's what I can and can't do, and it's almost like a list of rules. I want to just get close to Allah, and this is taking me away. This distraction, it's like a distraction taking me away from the worship of Allah. But what I don't realize is that the studying of the Sharia and even implementing that is an act of worship, and it does actually bring you closer to Allah. Even when it comes to learning about things which are arbitrary and not even related to you, not in the immediate future even, just by witnessing the justice of al-Islam and the mindset of al-Islam, that increases your iman, and you can actually get close to Allah with dhikr, as well as getting close to Allah by studying the Sharia and getting close to Allah in implementing the Sharia. And there's also another element which I've come across myself even, is that there's one element of studying the Sharia, and obviously there's that level of iman that you increase in, but it's also when you implement it and when you see the hikam, the wisdom behind its implementation, is a further increase in iman. So let me give one example. Salam. There's a thing called salam in Islam. Often it's touted as being the alternative to interest. What is salam, for those who are unaware? Salam basically is a bit like some people they tout it as like futures contracts. Basically, you're buying something in the future. Now, it's not futures as we know it today, because the way they implement it is not in accordance with the Sharia. There's certain things that is required in the Sharia that they don't have, which makes what they do haram, what we do halal. But basically, it means that you are a farmer. You need money, you need capital to buy the seed, to buy the fertilizer, to buy the tools. So you sell your produce before you've even produced those produce. So you raise that capital, and then when you produce the produce, they get their product at discount, obviously, because that's why they gave you the money in advance. They gave you a discount, and you've managed to produce the product in excess of what they wanted, so you can now sell it for others, and so on and so forth. You get the gist. Now, I studied that 2018 or 2008 or before, obviously, but only when I had to do, I did a business transaction or a contract where this came involved, where I really saw the benefit of it. And this is what will always happen. You study the Sharia, you understand this wisdom, but then only when you live it is when you feel it. And I didn't realize the connection. So let me explain what my situation was. So because I do photography, that's another one of the things I do. I do photography, and someone wanted me to do product photography for their Amazon items. So they said, we want this number of pictures for this number of items in this particular way. We wrote it all down on paper. They had a meeting, sat down, wrote down all the issues they wanted. We agreed on a price. He paid half now, and I'm going to be other half once I delivered. So I did what I was told to do. I followed each box, checked it all off, submitted the final result. He made some points. I adjusted, but he still wasn't happy. And he said he's not going to pay. I said, but brother, we had a meeting. We sat down, we defined, we homed it in, and everything in this box I ticked. therefore I should get paid. He said, yeah, but I don't like the pictures. I said, but brother, that's not the agreement. The agreement was these number 1 to 7 points, and I've done 1 to 7 points. Liking it is subjective, and the contract is not based on subjective opinions. It's an issue of, have you fulfilled what you asked me to do? You know. So we went to the Sharia Council to get this resolved, and alhamdulillah, it was resolved, and I got my pay and whatnot. But when I look back at the situation, I realized my mistake, because I didn't think it was connected. I just thought it was simple. You know, you want the pictures, I get paid for it, game over. Only when we had a problem, and I started to think about, why did we have this problem? I realized why we had this problem. So the reason we had a problem was because we were in between a paid employee and seller, a waged laborer and someone who produces a contractor, as a contractor. So as a waged laborer, you get paid per hour. I work as long as you tell me to work, and I get paid per hour. If you want me to edit these pictures, I'll edit them all day long until you're happy with it, and I get paid per hour. That's fine. A contractor says, I want X, Y, and Z, and I want to pay you this price for the delivery of that project. So that's a contractor. So he wanted the contractor behavior at a set wage. So he wanted a contractor product at a set wage, a set fee, but wanted me to behave like an employee as I'm working all day long. As long as he's happy, I'm working.
That's very common, by the way. That's a very common issue that people tend to have, especially freelancers.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely.
But that's the issue. The issue was, like I said, I had studied it. So you'd assume, but just because I studied it, I wouldn't have the problems. But I did, because although I studied it, I didn't recognize its application at that time. And this is what I'm saying, that level of ibadah. And when I had that light bulb moment, I was like, subhanallah, the sharia is already complete. It was already there for me, and I just didn't realize it. And this is what you get by even studying the sharia, even if immediately you failed to implement it because you either forgot or you didn't realize or you didn't understand certain things. Throughout your life, as you are trying your best to navigate throughout the world, as you see it's almost like as you see the sharia being revealed to you, its magnificence is being revealed, its perfection is being revealed, and that in and of itself lets you say subhanallah. So Allah, you know, that's this is an element of dhikr within studying the sharia.
SubhanAllah, Allah yabarak fikum. And this kind of, I mean, I want to move on towards the subject, because I feel like it's kind of centered around the idea of how we manage our finances, how we manage to use how we basically, for example, you mentioned Bay' al-Salam, the contract, for example, like I don't want to get into the fatwa habit of just throwing you questions and masail and whatnot, but like even the example of car finance, if you were to get, some ulama say, if you get one car on a finance deal, and that certain finance deal is cost plus, and there's no third party involved, and they are the dealers of the brokers of that deal, then some say it is permissible under the contract of Bay' al-Salam. Some say it's probably not, Allahu A'lam. But like the idea of knowing something can be impermissible if I got a third party involved, for sake of argument, and knowing that it's a fine line, and you have to make sure you chase up the car company, and make sure there's no third party involved, and make sure that these are trustworthy people. And it's any form of contract you're dealing with the person, you have to know that person. Do you trust that person? Do you trust that organization, that business? And it's subhanAllah, it's amazing. I mean, that's just one thing that I'm currently looking into right now, because I need to sell my car and get a new car. But like, that's something that I was thinking about, and I spoke to some scholars about this. But like, from your perspective, from how important is it to use personal finance? And it's not use personal finance, but like, how important is personal finance in our daily lives, and knowing the Sharia and how to apply it given our situations?
So one of the biggest and most significant blessings of studying the Sharia is that not only do you learn what Allah has prescribed us to do, we also learn an understanding of why these things are prescribed. And when you start, and I guess you could say this is where you pick up on the ethics of Islam. Sometimes people they focus too much on what I can and can't do, and lose on why you shouldn't do it. And I think and when it comes to finance specifically, this is one of those areas where I think people maybe due to selfish reasons, maybe due to environmental reasons, whatever the reason be, but they get preoccupied with what can I, and forget the what should I kind of question. So, okay, let's have a look at this one. Personal finance. In Islam, we find over and over and over again this disdain, this disgust of liabilities, of living beyond your means, living in debt. We have so many examples. The upper hand is better than the lower hand. I mean, again, that's disdain that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ refusing to pray over someone who died and had a debt on his head. The prohibition of interest in the first place, and the Allah's at war with not only one who receives the interest payment, but the one who gives the interest payments, the one who witnesses the interest agreement, the one who enforces it. So we see, ethically speaking, we see a message being sent to us, a message being sent via legislation. And the message is live within one's means, earn, work, and then reap the rewards. I mean, the biggest example of that is Al-Islam itself. We struggle and strive in this dunya. We give up on the things we want and desire for a reward later on. We don't get Jannah today, we get Jannah later on. We have at the core of our being delayed gratification. We delay reward until later on. Fasting in Ramadan, delayed gratification. Hajj, delayed gratification. All of that, delayed gratification. I mean, just look at the Hajj from the miqat. You can't cut your nails, you can't cut your hair, you can't use perfume. We go for all this suffering until at the end, now you can do it. Now you can get the reward of the suffering. So we have this as our core ethos: wait, patience, then reward. Finance is the polar opposite of that. Enjoy now, work later. Get what you want immediately and pay for it tomorrow. Bring forward your future and enjoy your future today, and worry about the problems later on. So even if, for the sake of argument, one could frame a contract that is within the remits of Islam, one should still ask himself, but should I be doing that though? Because if you live within the remits and the framework of Al-Islam, it not only changes your actions, it changes your decision making, it changes your mind. I'll give you an example, a personal example. For years, I'm a tech guy, I'm a gadget guy. Even one of my friends calls me Inspector Gadget because I love my gadgets. He's always saying, "What's your latest gadget?" So that's me. And one of the biggest gadgets I've always wanted is a Tesla. Oh, brother, Tesla, auto drive. I mean, I've even hired Tesla just to get experience. I've hired a Model X, I've hired a Model S. I mean, Tesla, I want a Tesla. And I got so maftoon, I got so afflicted with this fitna of the Tesla that I looked at the finance program and I looked at the lease program even. I thought, okay, look, I got this much money coming in on wages. I got this much, I need to live on. Could I pay it down monthly and get my Tesla? So I looked at it and I calculated that, you know what, I could do this, It's only X amount of money a month, That was my mindset. It's only X amount of money a month. So, but then I was looking into it. I was doing calculations. I put all the plan in place. I thought, yeah, I think I'm gonna do this. And then I paused and I thought to myself, well, wait, let me ask myself a question. If I had all the money ready right now to pay for it cash, would I do that? And this is the question you need to ask yourself. When I looked at, I went back to the Tesla website. I looked at how much would it cost to buy the car I want right now, cash.
Yeah.
I was in shock. I only was focusing on the monthly payments. I wasn't really looking at what am I actually paying to get what I want. And I looked at the value to the price of it, and I was embarrassed. I'm like, I can't believe I was willing to pay 6 figures
Subhanallah.
for a car.
Subhanallah.
I said to myself, I could build a masjid for that.
Yeah.
I've literally, my akhirah, I've literally said in my hereafter, I've literally said, rather than having a masjid where the Muslims pray 5 times a day, pray Eid, have nikah, service the community, rather than do that, I want to drive around in some piece of metal.
I think as well, Ustad, sorry to interject, is what the most important thing as well. The masjid obviously is akhirah rewards, but it's also an appreciating asset as well. Whereas as a car, there's no investment except enjoyment. It's just farah, that's really what you're having it for.
Yeah. But the point I wanted to get here wasn't the issue of the Tesla. I mean, Tesla's still a good car, and if you have excess cash, if you're a millionaire, then whatever, do you need to do it at the end of the day, because you can build masjid and have the car. I mean, for my situation at the time, I couldn't do that. If I was to buy a Tesla, I would have no money left. So literally, anyway, back to the point. My point wasn't that. My point was, when you frame your mindset in a credit framework, the way you think is different than if you frame yourself in an asset framework, as in if you work first and then buy. Even brothers come to me and say, brother, how can I buy a house? I said to them, why do you need a house? Oh, because this and because that and blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, great. You have your reasons for having a house. Cool. So let me ask you a simple question, brother, because you're asking about this finance here and that finance here. If you actually have £750,000 in your bank account right now, liquid, would you really spend all of that on a house? Like it's just gone. It's just there, gone. Would you really do that? I mean, knowing you could probably pay rent for 10, 20 years, or actually retire if you just leave the UK. I mean, think about it. You have £750,000. That is retirement money in many countries. That is in Turkey, that's retirement money. In Malaysia, that's retirement money. You could finish working and employment, spend your time with your kids, maybe travel a bit with your wife and do it. But you can do that with the value you want for a house in London. Would you still do that? And I think if you frame it in that way, I reckon most people wouldn't buy a house, because it's literally all their money is gone on this one asset that they know it could burn down. Something could happen. You get taxed on it every single time. I mean, there's so many things. You have to maintain on that property. I mean, there's one thing that one Kafir mentioned. He said that any asset you purchase, factor in 10% of its value just to maintain the asset.
Allah.
George Foreman, I think it was George Foreman, a boxer. Obviously, being a boxer, you get paid millions for fights. He went bankrupt because of the house he bought.
Wow.
He bought a house that was worth, I think, $5 to $10 million, and he never realized the cost of maintaining that house. He ended up having to sell the house because he couldn't afford to look after the house.
Wow.
Just to clean the pool, to heat that building, it costs money. So, yeah, back to the point is that, brother, you could find a car to put on finance, but the question is, do you need that, brother? I mean, realistically, that's why I always encourage people, look, if you're going to buy something, just buy it outright, because at least at that moment, mentally speaking, your decision-making is sound. If you're going to pay, you're going to pay it. Whereas otherwise, it's different. But anyway, that's just a little bit of, let's generally see how on the issue of finance. I generally say to people, even if it is allowed, don't do it. And on the second point of ethics, as I made a tweet the other day, I said, no one on planet Earth is going to lend you money for you to benefit unless they are family or friends. Your friends would do it, your family would do it, because you have a connection.
Yeah.
Ask yourself a question: why would a stranger do it? If you already have the mindset that riba is haram and riba is making money through money lending, why would a stranger give you a loan?
Yeah.
So when you ask these kind of questions, it makes you think, okay, actually, if I try to live ethically according to Islamic guidelines, even if what I'm doing is to the letter of the law, is it really down to the ethics of the law? Am I really benefiting, or am I just trying to, put my nets out on a Friday to get my fish on a Saturday so I can pick it up on a Sunday. You know
But
the typical scenario.
can I play devil's advocate in that sense?
Yeah, of
Because
course you
obviously,
can.
what you're saying is ethics from Islam. It's generally like, don't borrow beyond your means, don't live beyond your means, and be moderate with what you have, you know. But one thing I would like to say is that from an economics perspective, in the UK, and this is in many ways, in many fronts, you have the fact that there are dual income earners now in households. Both the spouses are working. Then you have obviously the government's kind of messed us up a little bit, and we're not in the best situation financially for those in the UK. Inflation is increasing, and the salaries are not compensated for that. Generally speaking, cost of living is not rather cost of living is increased, but we're not compensated for that in some sense. So we're in a situation where the real wages have decreased in real terms, and this is quite prominent in interest-based societies. I'd like to think, but also in other countries are affected because they're dealing with these countries. But from that perspective, even the concept of having a car, what used to be like £10,000 for a car, and you could maybe £5,000 for a car, that would have been enough for you to last a long time. Those same cars on a similar stage are now worth maybe £16,000. And then you're suddenly in this predicament where it's like, subhanallah, like for me, I'm thinking it from a perspective like this never used to be the case. I used to see my dad used to go car giant and used to buy a car outright on the day, and it was like £8,000, £7,000, and it would last like 6-7 years. But you can't get cars like that anymore. Every car, for some reason, for example, I was researching this because I'm into cars myself as well. I love Teslas. But what's happening with cars now, that the car brands like Toyota, car brands like Vauxhall, even these brands that were meant to be cheap, they've realized that people aren't buying cheap cars anymore. Only a few niche cars that are cheap that they keep, for example. But everything else, they're increasing in their value because people want to buy more expensive cars because of finance deals. And so the whole system is pegged around finance, of living off credit, and then everything just seems so expensive. And subhanallah, it's like it's definitely, obviously, there's not saying this, it's impossible, but it's just another trial for the believer in this country to look at this more, deeply.
See what you just did there. Hopefully, I want to home in. I want to zoom in, as they say, zoom and enhance. I want to zoom and enhance on what you just said there, because they're making more expensive cars because people can get finance. And that causes the issue of supply and demand to come into play, and so on and so forth. What people don't recognize is that the price of things are going up because of the exact act of borrowing. People sometimes they don't make the mental connection between the act of borrowing and what that does to the market. And like, kind of what you're saying is, well, everyone's doing it. I'm just a person on my own. I mean, if I don't do it, I'm disadvantaging myself, and that's actually true. The way the system is structured, if you try to live in Islam according to Islamic paradigms, you are disadvantaged by default, and you will feel it. Meaning, those who live on savings, those who earn and then spend, are disadvantaged, as opposed to those who spend and then earn. They are advantaged by the system itself, by the mere currency they use. They are disadvantaged, and this is the reality of the situation. So Muslims are put in a predicament. If I don't, basically, it's like saying if you don't swim along with the current, you get swept away. You're trying to go swim in the other direction, but the river's going the other direction. Why? If I just stand still, at least I'll go along with the current and I won't stress myself off. But what you have to recognize is that this is one of the reasons, and I'm sure there's many, many reasons, but one of the reasons why riba is haram, and one of the reasons why finance is haram, because it produces artificial demand. So a little step back for those who are maybe unaware of what we're talking about. I don't want to speak over anyone. So markets, prices are determined by what someone is willing to pay for it. What am I willing to pay for this thing when we factor in what other people are willing to pay? So let's just say an iPhone, yeah? So how much are you willing to pay for an iPhone? That's determined not just because of what you would decide, but also what other people decide. So I remember when iPhone first came out, it was like £500. And that was a lot of money at the time. It was like £500 for a phone. Are you mad? But now we have phones that are £1,500 for a phone. That's 3 times the price, if you think about it. And that's the flagship phone. The iPhone 4 was a flagship phone. That was £500. And now the flagship phone is £1,500. If I had said to you in 2008, 2009, this is the price of a phone, 1,500 quid, you'd be like, you're a mug. I'm not paying more than £1,500 for a phone. But why would you say you're a mug? Because no one will be willing to pay that. It's not because phones are not worth that much. It's because no one values it that much. It's only when we all value it that much why we can pay that much. Okay, so that teaches us where value actually comes from. Value comes from social
other
consensus.
people.
Social consensus, and where do we get social consensus from? We get it from one's abilities. So if you earn 30,000 a year, and most people earn 30,000 a year, that means with that 30,000 a year, they have to budget what they want and what they can get. And if an iPhone 13 Pro Max, whatever, the highest, whatever spec, if that is well beyond the budget of most people, then Apple just won't make a sale. But if Apple says, but wait, don't go away so soon, you can have your phone 0% finance. All you have to do, my son, is pay £20 a month and the phone is yours. All of a sudden, all of this market that was outside of the market, they were not even customers in the first place, are now customers. Now there's a demand when there wasn't a demand. And this is where you need to understand why finance and this living beyond your means is actually destructive to economies. It's not constructive, it's destructive to economies, because eventually it means it forces everyone into behaving the same way. If everyone takes finance, not taking finance, it is disadvantaged. So every time if all the Muslims stopped behaving that way, it would force them to think, okay, we need to, there's a whole industry here of how many million Muslims. We need to tap into that market. We need to find products for that market, and then the market will adjust to that demand. Does that make sense? Back to the point. So if you look at the history of, for example, house prices or car prices from 1971, when they depegged the dollar from the gold standard and they went onto this whole credit standard, you find that the price of things have continuously gone higher and higher and higher, where our wages have not. But again, you mentioned wages have not gone up to match inflation. Why? Ask yourself the question, why? Because the demand hasn't changed. There's still the same number of people. You can't have finance and wages. So there's people that are already there, and you actually can still live with the wages you have. You're still happy to work for the wages you have. So I can afford to still pay you a low wage because you can just get whatever you want on finance, on credit card, on higher purchase. You can still do what you need to do without the need for a higher wage. If there was no facilities for finance, I as an employer will be forced to pay you more because you have to earn, you need more. Does that make sense? So again, we see that all the problems we are complaining about, inflation, rising prices, all this kind of stuff, it's a byproduct of our actions. Our actions being, we want to live beyond our means. And it's kind of a sad thing, because then we're left with the dilemma. Okay, then what do we do then? You just told me all this bad news and inflation. You just woken me up to the fact that I am the problem. It's okay then, brother. What's the solution then, isn't it? I mean, what the heck? That's the discussion I think Muslims need to start thinking about and start addressing. Is not to moan about the problems, but to start homing in on the solutions.
But do you think as well there's an element of how we perceive spending? Like, we should have a more producer mindset than a consumer mindset. The idea of just buying the latest gadgets, unless you're a fanatic, like for example, you're an Apple fan or Tesla fan, or I'm into Samsung Notes or Samsung tablets, whatever it is. I like certain things because they give me value. And so some people, they look at options like the 0% finance options, like I can pay in installments. So I bought my tablet in three installments, I think it was, in Amazon or wherever it was. My phone as well. There was no interest involved. Those kinds of things, or even my washing machine. I'll be honest with you, the washing machines are ridiculously expensive. I don't even know why they're so expensive, but I had to buy it on a 0% finance deal. in installment
Mhm.
plans.
Mhm.
So like in that sense, like I don't have as much disdain. But when you discuss it from a structural viewpoint, you can see how it ramifications it has from a global economic scale in terms of inflation and especially when you compare to wages. I never really thought about that before. When you think of it from that perspective, it also shows that there's that element too. But I'm just thinking is there anything wrong with 0% APR? I know halal, why it's halal, but like, is it wrong for us to view it like it's something potentially structurally damaging us as an
No,
economy?
I mean, no. Well, economic wise, I
Yeah.
mean, it's damage. Like I said, 0% finance essentially means you're generating demand. That's what it is. The whole purpose of all finance is to generate demand.
Yeah.
I know most people can't afford X, Y, and Z, but if I said to them monthly, then all of a sudden now they can afford it. Now I have a new customer. It's essentially, it's like buy one get one free. That's generating
Yeah.
demand. It's generating a customer. Even if that is just a lie, and actually that's the half price is actually the cost of it. But I just said buy one get one free. I'm still generating demand.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, so the question is 0% finance a bad thing? I mean, is it halal? Of course it is. I mean, there's no reason why you can't do that. And let me give you a structure of how it will be 100% halal. I have a car. You want to buy the car off of me. I'm selling the car for $1,000. I don't know what car that would be, but it's a car for $1,000. So he said, bro, can I buy the car for $1,000? I said, yeah, but I can't pay all you now. I'm going to pay in installments. Okay. In that case, it's $1,500. I'll take £100 a month, but I'm selling you for $1,500. Fine, we'll do that. Yeah. So that's not riba because it's not a loan. I've sold you the car.
Selling, right?
The car is your car. Not even selling. It's not even selling.
Okay.
It's just selling your car with deferred payment. That's what it is. It's nothing complicated. You could do that. But we've agreed on a price. We've agreed on a price, and that price is the price of that delay. You could say, yeah, I haven't. It's the price of that delay and whatnot. But because that value was known at the beginning, it's not considered riba. Riba, one of the fundamental things that is wrong about riba is that you have no idea how much you're going to pay in the end. Will it be this amount or this amount? I don't know what the future's going to hold. I might be bankrupt next week and I can't pay, or I can't pay for that particular month. Therefore, the price goes higher. I don't know what I'm going to be paying for this thing in the end. Whereas if I set the price at the beginning, I know exactly how much I'm going to pay. It's known at the beginning, and therefore I can value it as it is. So there's nothing wrong with that, like that. And like I said, again, look at the ethos. The Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, refused to pray behind someone who had a debt they hadn't settled yet, knowing that having debts is halal. I mean, let us think for a second. Think in your brain for a second. Refusal to pray over someone for doing the mubah. They were allowed to take a loan, but he refused to pay it because of that disdain. Let us know
how serious it is.
It's not a good thing. If you have a debt, make sure you settle it quickly, and it's a liability, and that kind of stuff. Because essentially, when you have a debt, you're destroying capital, destroying money. Anyway, back to the point.
No.
So, 0% finance. What kind of person would that? What kind of person would that ethically suit? Someone who has needs. I have 20 children in the house. My washing machine is done. It's dead. I have no savings. I need to get a washing machine. I am compelled to get 0% finance on a washing machine because I need to wash clothes. There was a use case for that person in that circumstance. Let's look at someone else. Case number 2. Someone living on their own, and they earn 60,000 a year or 100,000 a year. They have enough money to buy a washing machine, but they still take it in finance. Why?
Yeah.
Why do you want to do that? Because I want to do other things. Now, again, there was no need for that debt, but he still took the debt. Okay, let's look at scenario number 3. There's another scenario. Another person, he has money. And he has money to buy the thing outright, finance. But he, rather than just dump the money in this asset and buy it outright, he gets a 0% finance, takes the rest of that capital, puts into an investment in whatever investment case. So he's actually trying to get a discount in the end on the washing machine. Rather than pay the full price of the washing machine, he wants to pay half the price. How half the price? Because the investment that the money is in would hopefully appreciate more than before the washing machine payments are due or not. So the money's already there. He's not really in debt. It's not really unavailable, but he's taking it from here and paying it off in installments from the investment asset. So essentially, he's combined between a trading opportunity and buying what he needs. Now, that is, I would say, a neutral case. Neutral meaning that, okay, it's permissible and it's an opportunity. You can probably do so. It's not the case where you must, like the first scenario. It's not a case where it's disliked, where you just doing it for the sake of doing it. It's actually a business opportunity, and I'll say it's more in a neutral sense. I won't say encouraged. I'll say it's neutral.
Yeah.
There's those three scenarios. And that's what I would say with regards to the 0% finance. And another benefit of that third scenario is that the risks are reduced because the capital to pay for it outright is there. And not only is that, you're not using it you're not using it to buy other things. It's actually sitting there to be taken from to pay off the thing. But it's just that you're hoping for, in a speculative manner, for the appreciation of this asset, whether you purchase, whether it be gold or whatever the case may be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but can I ask a question? That investment asset that you have, if it's stock, whoever it is, that's halal, some assets are more liquid than others. So in that case, would it be better to choose a more liquid asset that you could, if you need to buy off the outright, there was opportunity for that? For example, like in the past, if it was farming, where you had to wait 6 months, or whatever it was, for the crops to be harvested, or wherever it was, and so there was more not delayed payment, but there was more delayed payments in that sense because you had to wait a certain period of time. Whereas some things are so fast paced right now. If I could just take from my halal savings account, or I can take it from some assets, I could sell some stock straight away and put that back in. Is there an element that we should be more wise with what we choose to invest that money with?
Yeah, definitely, because like I said, the issue of liquidity is the issue. I mean, generally speaking, most likely the case is that if this asset is actually appreciating in value and going up in value, when it comes that monthly time to pay off, you probably just pay from your wages and leave it there. You wouldn't really take from it. I mean, essentially you're taking from it, but you're not really taking from it. It's there to be spent. But if the price is going up and up and up and up, and you're getting more monthly wages that you can just pay from your wages, you just do that anyway. It's just there. Worst case scenario, house burnt down, everything is dead, everything is gone, the money's still there to pay for that thing. You can almost say. So it depends on how it is. Obviously, if you put it into something that is illiquid, like imagine you did some nonsense like you bought a flat, and property is like the most illiquid asset you can probably get. It takes months just to sell the thing, even if you find a buyer, paperwork and that kind of stuff. So that is that's a ridiculous thing to choose in that regards. But yeah,
interesting.
But like I said, this is where you have ethics. This is where you have practice. In practice, 0% finance is halal, with the caveat. I forgot to mention this caveat. With the caveat that it is actually 0%, meaning that in all scenarios, that's what you pay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
because there are some 0% finance which are not really 0% finance. There's 0% finance for a period of time, and then there's interest beyond that time. That's not the same thing.
Interesting.
That is a riba-based loan. So if they say 0%, if they say something like if they word it like 12 months 0% finance, that's still riba, because beyond the 12 months is you contractually agreed to pay more. But
installment plans is like, for example, three installment plans at this price, and it's the exact same price as the original.
So even then, installment, the wording here, look at the word. They say installment plans. That's not finance. That's installment plan. Even the word they use is different. Like some companies, what they'll do is that when you sign the contract, what's really happening in the background is that someone else is paying them cash right now. And you're in agreement with that other person who's paying you. So let's have a scenario. Imagine again, iPhone, iPhone $1,700, or £1,700 or whatever, and you get this 0% finance from whatever company, What's happening in the background is that they're getting 1,600 from the financer, and you're paying back that person 1,700. Makes sense? So they're still making money from this transaction. Does that make sense?
But you wouldn't know.
Because for example, again, there's three people. Let's just say Samsung or Apple, whatever. You have Apple over here. They've got their money immediately from another person over here who is Tucker Finance, and then they're making money from you paying them. How are they making money? Because they paid Apple less than market value for the product, because Apple wants the money right now. They need they're willing to receive less for the phone because they get it now.
Because they absorb the risk. The other third party absorb the risk.
Absorb the risk. Excellent. And the third party, Tucker Finance, they get the 1,700, which is for the phone in capital, but they only paid Apple 1,500. So in the back end, there's stuff going on, but in the front end, it seems like, I'm paying the same as everyone else paying for a phone. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Interesting.
So there are caveats in that regard. That's what I said to you in the beginning.
Yeah.
Why would just ask yourself a question? Why would anyone give you a loan for free? How are they helping you? Now, I could do it. For example, in our madrasa, what we've done a few times is that we've said, look, to a parent, if they can't pay madrasa, you just pay us in installments. You will just end up paying a bit more. They agreed to that and they paid for it. So the agreement between me and them, it's an installment plan. If they decide to run off or not pay or delay, we're still asking for the same value wanted because that's what we agreed to pay.
You absorb the risk of there's an element of risk involved with the installment plan, for example, because the money they've paid in installments, they haven't paid over everything.
The key issue is how much are they willing? What is the actual payment demanded of them? Only what was agreed at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. If at any point I said, well, if you're this late, we're going to now charge you more. Now that's something else.
That's something else. Okay.
One could say, well, we have said in the past, if you delay, then you will have to absorb the costs of fees from the courts. So if you have to take it to court to get our money back, then you're liable to pay for that. The difference in that is that they're not paying us; they're paying the courts. They're saying, look, if you have to go to court, you're paying legal fees.
Yeah.
So it does end up being more for you, but not more for me. So that's just how you need to look at it. But in terms of the finance, to be honest, especially things that are cheaper like cars, washing machines, phones.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult just to wait, brother. I mean, if you want to want iPhone, you start from January, put aside £100, £200, January, February, March. By the time October comes, a new phone drops, you have the money there. But I guarantee you, bro, if you have 1,000 quid in your hand and you walk into the Apple store, are you handing over 1,000 quid for a phone, brother?
It kind of desensitizes you. So basically, from what I'm trying to understand is that there's an element of hikmah behind it, not taking too much loans or debts, being in a state of debt, because it kind of teaches you the value of things. Whereas if you were to pay in installments or whatever finance, you just say, it's just £20 a month, £30 a month.
I want everyone to underline a sentence the brother just said here. Teaches you the value of things. One of the most significant byproducts of riba is the distortion of prices.
SubhanAllah.
Even kuffar who are aware of this say this. It distorts the prices of things in the markets. We can't price things correctly. It's a fact. I'm telling you as a fact. You can agree with me or not agree with me. I'm telling you this as a objective fact. House prices in the UK and probably elsewhere in the world are inflated. They are higher than they should be, beyond what they should be. Why? Because of finance. We think this house is worth $500,000, $750,000 because that's what the market says. But if we were to remove riba from the market and people have to actually pay and save up for it, it would not be that price.
SubhanAllah. Yep.
So the real casualty of this event is the prices. And what's interesting, subhanallah, I didn't even realize this until just saying this now. The Messenger of Allah, there's a hadith, the Messenger of Allah, the companions came to him and said, "Oh Messenger of Allah, the prices of things have gone up. Set the prices for us, oh Messenger of Allah. They're too expensive." And he said, "Verily it is Allah who sets the prices." I do not want to come on a day of judgment where any one of you comes to me with a mazlama, with oppression, because he set the price at what it shouldn't be. The prices of things is almost sacred. It's what it should be. When you add things like interest and riba and price fixing and government mandates of what things should be and subsidies and all of this destroys price action. It destroys 100%. Price action. 100%. And every time a Muslim tries to engage in that, we are also engaging in the destruction of prices.
Yeah, it's just,
So There you go.
It's responsible financing is kind of what you're saying, right? Be responsible. Halal is good, but if you want to be better than, as in, look for opportunities where you don't squander your wealth. لا تسرفوا. Like don't just be,
Yes.
don't do israf when perhaps, for example, let's say I want a nice car. I want to get a 4 Series Grand Coupe, wherever it is, whatever, or an R, Volkswagen Polo R or something. Do I really need that car if I need to go A to B? Can I settle with a car without financing? Have I looked
Bro,
at
I think
the
what you
option?
would find, and I think anyone in the comments below or whatnot can challenge me on this one. I think you find that 90%. This is right. You know those stats. 90% of stats are made up on the spot. This is one of them. I would say 90% or more of all financing are of things we don't need, but we want.
Yeah.
I don't need a house. I want a house. I don't need a car, but I want a car. I don't need a new watch, but I want a watch. I don't need a phone, but I want a phone. I think it's all to do with what we want and not what we need. One brother said to me, "Brother, what you're saying means I can't buy a house." And I'm saying, no, you can buy a house if we're talking about buying a house. But what you're saying is you want to buy this particular house in this particular area.
Yeah.
If you have the money for the deposit on a house, even with an Islamic mortgage, you have enough money to buy it outright, just not in the area you want. You can buy a whole flat. You buy a whole flat for about £50,000 in Turkey.
Yeah.
Just fly
Right
there,
now. Yeah.
visa free, right now. Find locations, nice flat, nice area, brand new build. You're the first owner. It's yours, right? If you wanted a house, but it's not that you want a house. You want that house. It's not that you want a car. You want a Tesla Model S, with all the trimmings, autopilot, with the thick rims, all of it, nice white finish. You want all of it, two-tone color. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I'm telling you, we've all been through it. I went to the Tesla website. I looked at how much the monthly payments was. I said, add on these little bits here. If I add in this bit here, the leather seats and whatnot, it's only adding 50 quid a month. And it's what we want, brother. It's not what we need. And this constant feeding the nafs. There's a very famous poem in Arabic. النفس راغبة إذا رغبتها وإذا منعتها على قليل تقنع. The nafs is a raghiba. The nafs is a desirer. It requires and wants. If you feed it once, but if you hold back the nafs and give it only a little, it gets satisfied. So this is why I'm telling you, the whole book called the Fiat Standard. It's a good book everyone to read. Written recently by a Lebanese brother.
Tariq Al-Dawani. Is it by Tariq Al-Dawani by any chance?
No. It's by Saifuddin. It's talking from the paradigm of Bitcoin, but he's talking about fiat, the current money system we have today, and what does it have? What effects does the fiat have on society? And we think that it's only to do with inflation. No, the effects of this go so deep. It even infects the food we have. He actually demonstrates read a book. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but read a book. He actually demonstrates how the quality of food throughout the decades has constantly declined more and more and more and more. But why? The declination of the quality of the food is in correlation to the degradation of the value of your fiat currency, because companies want to keep the prices relatively the same. They don't want to put the prices up higher and higher and higher. They want to try and keep it relatively the same, because if you put the prices up higher, you're gonna go somewhere else. So there's this race to the bottom to try and give you less and less and less. We all know this. How much fish is in fish fingers? I mean, there's a whole thing about a few years ago that like 14 or 5% of the fish finger is actually fish. How do we get from fish finger, which is actually a cut of fish in batter, wrapped and packaged, to now fish mixed with sawdust and some material, some old jeans mixed together and make a fish? How do we get from here to here? Because of the money we have, because of the inflation we have, because of the system we have of riba. It affects everything: the psychology, the food, everything.
I think even like the whole concept of centralizing decentralizing currency is. I understand obviously you're into this crypto finance and you're into, and I can see the economic benefit of decentralizing finance if that concept does exist, if it does exist, because of the harms that it brings in terms of printing money. If the either, for example, gold is generally it's a scarce resource,
Yeah.
whereas receipt fiat currency is receipt based. It's printed. It's superficial.
Yeah.
And it's manufactured. And I can, as someone who studied economics myself, I can see the harms that can bring. It's something unnatural we're using as our basis of living. Subhanallah.
I mean,
And that
just
has
anyone
ramifications.
listening, just a little slight correction in case someone's listening. I'm not really a supporter of crypto finance. I'm a
Okay.
supporter of Bitcoin, not
Okay.
the other coins. I mean, there are thousands of useless nonsense out there, which are
Yeah.
which in essence, many of them actually just try to replicate the same system.
Mm.
I know it sounds weird because it's about cryptocurrencies and how it's supposed to be changing the world and to a better place. But to be honest, if you actually look at 99.9% of them, all they're doing is trying to replicate the current system. Only Bitcoin is actually trying to not replicate the system, but actually do the complete opposite. Bitcoin
Okay.
as a currency is an anti-riba currency. It's a currency which actually fights against riba. I know people don't really recognize it or don't see it as that, but Bitcoin actually combats riba. In a Bitcoin system or society, you can't feasibly have a finance system. You can't. You can only have a finance system that we have today if you have an inflationary currency that we have today.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You couldn't function in a finance-based system. You couldn't. What it means is that if I was to come to you, so can I borrow from you 1 Bitcoin? Yeah, cool. Pay me 1 Bitcoin in 5 years' time. If in that 5 years' time the price of Bitcoin is, or the purchasing power of Bitcoin is getting higher and higher and higher, when could you ever pay that back? Which means it discourages you from even the idea of interest. Can you imagine me paying you back Bitcoin with 1% or 2% or 10% APR? That's ridiculous. It
It
just wouldn't
costs you
happen.
not to do something silly like that.
It causes us
Basically.
to do something similar like that. Whereas if you was in a Bitcoin standard, it actually, listen carefully, this is the flip side. If you think about all we just discussed in the last hour about fiat and about our current system, how it makes us this way, Bitcoin is the complete opposite. It causes you to actually save. If you know today 1 Bitcoin can buy you, so you need 2 Bitcoin to buy 1 Tesla. And if you knew that all you had to do is wait a few years, where you could buy a Tesla with 1 Bitcoin, you would wait. You would delay gratification. You would delay having to have the instant impulse to buy right now. You say, okay, cool. I can't afford it right now, but if I just keep on working and just chill, eventually it'll be coming in my scope at some point. It's the complete opposite mindset of I need to buy it right now because I want it right now. No, I can wait. It changes you from a person of instant gratification to a person of delayed gratification, which is in line with what I just said in the remit of. So I don't want to turn this discussion into Bitcoin shilling, but I'm just saying that when it comes to crypto, I'm not a proponent of cryptocurrencies. I'm a proponent of Bitcoin specifically. Now, other coins may have their own features and whatnot, but in terms of the currency, Bitcoin is the only one that is anti-fiat or anti-interest baked within the code.
MashaAllah, may Allah preserve you, Ustad. I understand you've got other commitments coming up very soon, but I just have one more question, and that's to do with investments. Obviously, you mentioned a scenario where you, instead of paying it outright, you have the money to pay outright, but you pay in installments, interest-free installments, and the remainder of that money or portion of that money you can put aside for investments for sake of argument. But you're still earning money, your salary, so you have backup, you have some sort of backup financing. But just generally the concept of investing your money for assets that appreciate in value potentially. How important is it as Muslims? What should we look for when it comes to investment? Should we be wary of certain things, certain companies, despite it being classed as halal by some people? How do we meander around the concept of investments?
So, have you heard of the phrase monetization?
Monetization is like I have heard of it. I can't really define it.
So let me explain what monetization is. Normally, if you have money, obviously money. You have pounds, you have dirhams and dinar, whatever you have money. The purpose of money is to store your hard labor until when you wish to use and dispense that money and use it. If you are in a situation where the medium of storage is degrading, is being eroded away, is being destroyed on a regular basis, i.e. inflation, people move their value, move their work to a better medium of storage. So this is not even an issue of investment. This is not an issue of making money. It's just an issue of preserving what you've already got. So what's happening right now globally for many decades now is the monetization of assets, meaning people using other assets to store wealth as well as make money. Let me give you an example. I've got money in the bank. Rather than sitting in the bank and losing 2 to 7% every year, why not buy a property? Due to inflation. Why not buy a property that at least keeps up with inflation, that I'm not even losing value. So the price of my money is going down by 2%, but the price of this house is going up by 2%. At least that balances off with what we're doing. This constant juggling on this. So what this means is a lot of these assets, whether it be stocks, whether it be commodities like gold and silver and whatnot, whether it be
savings accounts,
a lot of these things, a lot of these things have been used as alternative means of store of value. Again, that means that there are buyers of the asset. They don't want the asset. They just want to preserve the loss of purchasing power of their money. And that's meant by monetization.
Okay.
Of an asset, i.e., the transition of this asset from being what it is to being money. And let me give you an example of how of an extreme example of monetization. In Venezuela, when they were having inflation of thousands of percent, like a year, that means like this January 2021, a chicken was like 1,000 bolivars, and now the next year later, it's like 10,000 bolivars. That's what some madness like this, What Argentinians were doing, what the Venezuelans are doing, they were buying like crazy, washing machines, fridges, cars, whatever, and leaving it in the packaging. So that when they wanted to spend that money, then they sold it for the market price. And also they made money because the price of these things were constantly going up and up and up and up. What that means is they actually monetized the washing machine. They turned washing machines and fridges and cars into money, into storage of money. Even in countries, you find that often in countries of inflation, like in Turkey, you'd be surprised that cars in Turkey are very expensive. Why are cars expensive? Because Turks see cars, or not all, but some Turks are taking cars as not just I want a car because it's cool, but because it's a good means to store your wealth. Having a nice car doesn't depreciate like it does in the UK. It actually can hold its value, even go up.
I think they have their own car companies as well within Turkey. It's got some ecosystem of cars, I believe.
They have their own. Turkey's got a really strong economy, generally speaking. I mean, putting aside it's lira as a body of people, they're insane. Back to the point. So when it comes to investment, people have to be aware that this is happening around them before they even got involved in the investment world. People around them are using these things just to avoid inflation. And what that means is there could be a shift in what people monetize. If for whatever reason people decide to not use houses anymore as a store of value and start using other things as a store of value, that will have an impact on the price of housing. It hasn't to do with the demand. The demand hasn't gone down. It's not like people no longer want houses. They just don't want houses. But it's just that those who never wanted a house, they just want to store their wealth, are now going elsewhere. So there's also these things you have to factor in when it comes to investment purposes. So back to your question, what advice would I give to a person who wants to look at investment? The first thing I would advise is not to invest at all any amount of their money until they've educated themselves on what it means to invest and in how to invest. Most people just want me to tell them, buy this stock and I'll rush off and buy it. That's not how you make money. Making money is to know where and when to execute your trade. Sometimes, even in the market, it's not about what you know, It's how you execute the trade. What was your entry point? What was your exit point? When did you buy? When did you sell? When is a good time to buy? When is a good time to sell? And that knowledge comes with experience. It's like some people always say to me, "Oh, bro, I want to trade cryptocurrency. I want to trade stocks. I want to trade. I said to them, "Look, bro, if you want to be a chef, how many dishes would you ruin before you're a good chef? Many. For maybe a couple of years even. You'll be burning all day long. So now convert those burnt dishes into burnt trades. And each trade is the capital in your hand. You're going to lose a lot of money before you even begun to become profitable. Which is why trading isn't this quick thing you can just do and therefore you make money. It takes a lot of time, patience, and experience to do so. And maybe it's better to do something else that you're good at. Does that make sense?
Like a business or something else.
Like a business or whatnot. Yeah. So my point is, in conclusion, is that there is no straightforward answer as to where one must go. I have my own strategy. I have my own advice I would give myself and I act upon. But what should you do? I would always say educate yourself on the world around you. And if you understand the world around you, you understand where your money should go. So the good place to start in that journey in education are two fundamental books. One I already mentioned, called the Fiat Standard, and the other one is called the Bitcoin Standard. Why those two books? It's not because I'm just shilling Bitcoin and whatnot. Put Bitcoin aside. I mean, literally, put Bitcoin aside. I know it says the Bitcoin Standard, but it's more to do with the world around us. I want you to learn about, rather than the Bitcoin itself. Maybe you like Bitcoin, maybe you don't like Bitcoin, but the thing is,
the system, the structure.
The system. Yeah. Bitcoin came about as a result, as a reaction to the system. The question is, what is this system it was reacting to? That's what I want you to focus on. Forget Bitcoin, forget what. Just focus on what is the system it is, how does it function, why does it function that way. Once you understand that, I guarantee you'd have a better understanding, you'd have the tools available to make better decisions. That's the point. Education is the way forward. Two books: the Fiat Standard, Bitcoin Standard, and maybe another one called The Price of Tomorrow. The Price of Tomorrow basically refers to it talks about how inflationary economies work and how deflationary economies work. Basically, it's a bit like economics, but those two books are good places to start.
Allah yabarik fikum, Shaykhana. I think it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. I think you're very multifaceted. You've got very unique perspective, and the most important thing about it is that you're grounded by the Sharia, which makes it even better. So you can get advice from certain things within the framework of Islam, what's permissible, what's better for us, and the spiritual advice. And I think that's very underrated in terms of today. People don't respect it enough, but it's definitely something that I appreciate. So God bless you. And I think our listeners who will be seeing this podcast, it is the way, Sheikh. I know you're being a humble, man. I'll accept it from you. But I think for the viewers, inshallah, be viewing this later on. Do put questions in if you have any questions for the Sheikh. I'm sure you can contact him through Twitter. MashaAllah, he's got an active Twitter account, I believe. I checked it out. MashaAllah. So do contact the Sheikh or whatnot if you have any questions. If you want to feature again in the podcast for specific topics on finance again, or perhaps even his Arabic understanding of how to approach Arabic, whatever it is, if you'll put it in the comment section below, I think we probably might get comments on that Bidna Rabbi as well. So yeah, Jazakallah khair, Shaykhuna. You're a very busy man. And Bidna Rabbi, we'll continue, perhaps have you again on the podcast. Bidna Rabbi, inshallah. الله يبارك فيك سبحانك وبحمدك ونشهد ان لا اله الا انت ونستغفرك اليك والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله.
امين وياك جزاك الله. السلام عليكم.
حياك الله حبيبي.